At Thanksgiving, Dad said, "The house, land, and cabin go to your sister. It's fair." A year later, they stood homeless at my door, begging, "Let us stay." I smiled. "You chose her. Live with it. Hey, Reddit." My family always treated me like their personal power source, paying their bills, fixing their messes, keeping everything running. Then one day, I flipped the switch. But before we get to that, let me start from the beginning. My name's Colton Ward. I'm 31 and work as a power plant operator at Everidge Power Station, the kind of place that never sleeps. The plant hums day and night, turbines echoing through concrete like thunder. I monitor the systems, climb ladders slick with oil, and keep the current steady when everyone else is asleep. People at the station know me as the quiet one who doesn't lose his head when alarms flash. If something breaks, I fix it. If the grid stumbles, I keep it alive. It's not glamour, it's control. The machines listen when people don't. I live 15 minutes away in a small apartment that smells like steel and detergent. One bedroom, one trottoir, spotless floors. It's enough. The mortgage draft's on the first, the shelves are lined with tools instead of decorations, and the hum from the power lines outside keeps me company. Every month, I send money to my parents, just enough to cover whatever they claim needs paying. They never ask politely, and they never say thanks. It's just assumed. My mother calls it helping out, like I'm the family fund instead of the son. My father, Ray, says nothing at all. Silence is his favorite way to remind me who he thinks runs the family. My sister, Lena, is the only one who talks too much. Online, she calls herself an entrepreneur, posting filtered photos from coffee shops about her next project. Every launch, every lease, every box of supplies, she pays for it with my transfers. Not that she tells anyone. According to her feed, she built everything from scratch. At the plant, Cal Bennett, the technician I work most shifts with, ribs me about it. "You keep half the city lit," he says, tightening a valve, "and your family still treats you like a backup generator." I grin without looking up. Someone's got to keep things running. Cal shakes his head. "Man, they'd go dark in a week without you." He's not wrong. When the city flickers during a storm, my phone rings before the system even registers it. Everyone trusts I'll answer. That's what I do. Stay calm, fix the fault, move on. It's the same pattern that's kept me from arguing at home. After the night shift, I drive the old truck out past the edge of town. The highway bends through fields where the soil turns to mud in winter. A few miles down that road sits the Ward farmhouse. Weathered siding and a porch I rebuilt 3 years ago when the boards started to rot. I replaced the lights too. LEDs strong enough to last a decade. They glow in the distance when I crest the hill, warm yellow against the dark. The sight hits me the same way every time. That light belongs to me more than it does to them, but they'll never see it that way. Inside those walls, my father is probably watching the late news, complaining about taxes. My mother's likely planning what she'll buy with next month's transfer. Lena's upstairs rehearsing another pitch video about her brand. The house runs smooth because I keep the current flowing. I pull over at the old fence line for a minute, engine idling, the dashboard clock blinking, 2:17 a.m. I can hear the low buzz from the power lines stretching across the fields. The same pulse I hear at work follows me everywhere. It's steady, mechanical, predictable, not like people. When I was a kid, I thought hard work earned respect. I believed fixing things made you part of something. But years of sending money, patching roofs, and staying silent taught me otherwise. Some folks take power for granted until it's gone. I turn the truck around and head back toward the city. The glow from the farmhouse fades in the mirror until it's just another speck on the horizon. Back in the apartment, I hang my jacket on the same hook, check the meters, and listen to the low hum through the walls. The plant's rhythm follows me here. It's comforting in a way family isn't. Machines don't lie, and they don't pretend. Tomorrow's another double shift. Cal will joke again about me being married to the grid. I'll nod and keep working. That's the job. Make sure the current never stops. Even when the people closest to you already have, they never said thank you. But I stopped waiting to hear it. Thanksgiving was the only weekend off I'd had in 3 months. I finished my Friday shift, cleaned up, and stopped by the bakery near the plant. I didn't bother cooking. I knew no one at home would notice the difference. The pie box sat on the passenger seat as I drove through the cold back roads toward the farmhouse. By the time I pulled into the driveway, every window was already lit. I could see movement inside, plates clinking, voices overlapping. I was late, but no one had called to ask where I was. When I stepped in, they were already halfway through dinner. My mother looked up first, expression tight. "You finally made it," she said, setting her fork down. "We thought you might have had to work again." "Shift ended early," I said, placing the pie on the counter. "Bro dessert." Dad didn't look up. He sat at the head of the table, carving what was left of the turkey, while grumbling at the TV mounted on the wall. "World's full of lazy people," he muttered. "Nobody wants to earn anything anymore." "Your father's been watching the news again," Mum said, with a nervous laugh. "You know how he gets." Lena leaned back in her chair, eyes bright with energy that didn't belong in this house. "You should have seen the morning rush at my new office," she said, scrolling through her phone. "I met with a potential investor this week. Big name, might even get featured online." I took the empty seat across from her. "Which business is this one?" She rolled her eyes. "The wellness company. Colton, I told you about it. Don't tell me you forgot." I remembered perfectly. She'd already asked me twice to invest, though. She called it helping family. Dad snorted. "Your sister's got vision. You could learn from that, son. You've been stuck in that same place for what, 10 years? 8, I said quietly. Mom smiled like she was trying to keep the peace. "Still, maybe your father's right. You're smart, Colton. You could do something bigger than fixing machines." "I'm doing fine," I said. The air thickened. Forks scraped plates. Lena kept talking, showing pictures on her phone of an office that looked barely furnished. "It's small now," she said, "but we're expanding. I might hire staff by next quarter." Dad nodded proudly, not even looking at the screen. That's what ambition looks like. I stayed quiet, eating slowly. The house smelled like roasted vegetables and detergent. Every word around the table landed like a tap hammer. Polite but meant to bruise. Mom glanced at me again. "You look tired. You're not working nights again, are you?" "Most of them," she sighed. "That can't be good for you. You should think about settling down somewhere quieter." "I like the city." Dad grunted. "You like being alone. That's not the same thing." The words slid out of him like habit. I didn't respond. There was no point. Dinner kept going. A slow argument disguised his conversation. They asked questions they didn't care to hear answered. Lena talked over me. Mom smiled through every interruption. Dad lectured about men who waste their best years chasing paychecks. Then it happened. Dad put down his fork, cleared his throat, and said, "We've been talking, your mother and I. We've made a decision about the family properties." Mom straightened like she already knew the speech by heart. "The house," Dad continued, "the land and the cabin up at Brook Lake. We're putting them under Lena's name. Papers were recorded last week. The clatter of cutlery stopped. Even the TV seemed quieter. I looked at him, then at Mom. She didn't meet my eyes. "It's fair," she said softly. "You have your job, your apartment, your own life. She needs help getting started." Lena's smile was small, smug. "It just makes sense. You don't even like being out here anyway." I stared at my plate. The turkey was cold. My reflection in the knife looked steady. Inside, Everything was still. The same silence I hear in the plant when the generators stall for half a second before the backup kicks in. Dad leaned back, satisfied. We figured it's best to handle things now instead of later. Fewer problems that way. Right, I said. My voice came out calm, almost detached. Smart move, Lena laughed lightly. Don't be weird about it, Colton. You've got your own place. I'm just keeping the family legacy alive. I stood, pushed my chair back slowly. Thanks for the meal. Mom looked up confused. You're leaving already? I've got work in the morning. Dad frowned. You can't stay an hour and be thankful. I glanced at him. I am. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed my jacket, and stepped outside before anyone could say more. Behind me, I heard Mum call my name. Then Lena's voice, sharp, mocking. He's always been dramatic. The door clicked shut. The air outside was cold and sharp. The fields were dark, except for the farmhouse lights glowing warm behind the curtains. I stood for a moment, hands in my pockets, watching my breath drift away. Then I got in the truck and started the engine. The drive back to the city was quiet. No radio, no music, just the steady hum of the power lines tracing the road. My kind of company. By the time I reached the apartment, the pie was still in the passenger seat, untouched. I carried it upstairs and set it on the counter. I didn't feel angry, just clear. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I logged into my bank account and erased every link that tied me to my family. The transfers for their utilities, property tax, and insurance gone. I stared at the confirmation page for a second, half expecting the screen to ask if I was sure. I was. For years, those automatic payments had run without me thinking about them. Every month, money disappeared like clockwork. Now, the silence after canceling them felt louder than any alarm I'd ever heard at the plant. By Tuesday morning, my phone started buzzing non-stop. I ignored the first few calls. Then came the voicemails. Mum's voice was first shaky, but rehearsed. Colton, sweetheart, we noticed the payments didn't go through. Maybe it's a bank issue. Please call back. This is tearing the family apart. The next one was Dad shouting through static. You think you can just cut us off like we're strangers after everything we did for you? You're selfish, boy. Ungrateful. Then Lena soft and syrupy. Hey, Colton, just checking in on you. I know you're probably busy. By the way, I need a little bridge loan. Nothing major. Promise I'll pay it back. She sent the same message twice more that day, changing the excuse each time. By the end of the week, there were 27 missed calls and 9 voicemails. I didn't answer any of them. I deleted each one after another until the screen finally stayed quiet. Then I blocked their numbers. The next morning, the alarm at the plant went off at 5:30 sharp. I walked in with my coffee, same as always. Cal was already there, leaning over a maintenance log with grease on his hands. He looked up when I entered. You look lighter, he said. Something happened? I shrugged. Fixed a few things. He grinned. Feels like you cut a cord? Maybe I finally did. He didn't ask what I meant. We both went back to work. The turbine room was loud, steady, dependable. The hum of the generators was the kind of sound you could lean on. I liked that noise without judgment. That week, everything felt cleaner. I stopped checking my phone during lunch breaks. I slept straight through the night. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up to messages asking for help. The apartment stayed quiet except for the soft buzz of the refrigerator and the wind brushing against the window. I started cooking again. Simple meals, nothing fancy, just something I made for myself. On nights off, I took apart old motors in the corner of my living room, machines I'd salvaged from the plant scrap pile. There was a peace in seeing how every piece fit, how every wire had its place. Sometimes I caught myself wondering what they were doing back at the farmhouse, whether the power was still on, if the bills were piling up, if Lena's wellness company had already folded. The thoughts didn't sting, they just passed through like distant static. Cal noticed I was quieter, but not in the old way, more focused. He said I worked like a man with nothing left to prove. One night during the graveyard shift, we were outside doing a system check. The cold air carried the sound of the high voltage lines overhead, a low, endless hum. Cal looked up and said, "You ever notice how that sound never really stops? Even when the grid's down, there's always a little current running somewhere." "Yeah," I said. "It's called residual charge." He nodded slowly. "Guess people are the same way. Takes a while to bleed out what's been running too long." I didn't answer, but he wasn't wrong. Over the next month, life settled into rhythm. Work, sleep, cook, fix something old, repeat. Each day ran smoother than the one before. I wasn't angry, and I wasn't waiting for anything. I just unplugged from the circuit that kept burning me. But the thing about shutting off power is that it doesn't stay still. Energy moves somewhere else. Even when the current stops, there's always that faint pulse left behind, waiting to discharge. That pulse stayed in me. A small, steady curiosity about what would happen next. Not revenge, not hate, just a quiet question. What happens when people who've lived off your current realize the switch has flipped? I didn't plan on answering it right away. I just waited, steady as the turbines turning in the dark, listening to the hum fade bit by bit until there was only silence. It was close to midnight when my phone rang. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another wrong number or a work call. Then I saw the name Clara Hastings, my mother's mother. I hadn't heard her voice in months. A nurse answered when I picked up. She said Clara was in hospice, not doing well and asking for me. I told her I'd come by after my shift. By the time I got there, the halls were quiet. The smell of antiseptic and something faintly sweet hung in the air. Her room light was dim, one lamp glowing in the corner. She looked smaller than I remembered, skin pale, hands folded neatly over a thin blanket. But when I stepped in, she opened her eyes and smiled. "You still keep your promises," she said softly. "I knew you'd come." I pulled a chair closer to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like someone running out of charge," she said, smiling again. Her voice was weak, but clear. "But I wanted to see you before I go." I nodded, unsure what to say. "You've always been the one who stayed steady," she went on, "even when they made it hard." "They?" I asked, though I knew who she meant. She took a slow breath. "Your parents? I know how they've treated you. You don't have to pretend." I stayed quiet. "Colleton," she said, her voice low. "There's something I should have told you years ago." I leaned forward. Her eyes stayed fixed on mine, sharp despite how tired she looked. "You're not Ray's son," she said. The room went silent. I thought I'd misheard. She kept talking. "Elaine had an affair. Before they married, she was young, confused. When she found out she was pregnant, Ray married her anyway. But he knew. He's known your whole life." I sat still, trying to keep my breathing steady. "That's why he's been the way he is with you," she whispered. "He took his anger out on the wrong person. You were just a reminder he couldn't ignore." I stared at the wall for a long moment. The faint hum of the hospital machinery filled the silence. Did Mom ever say anything? She begged me not to. Clara said it would ruin everything. She thought if she stayed quiet, he'd forgive her. But he never did. He just turned that resentment toward you. My jaw tightened, so she let him. Clara closed her eyes briefly. She told herself it was for the family's peace. But peace built on lies doesn't last. She looked up again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. You deserve to know." I nodded slowly. "You don't need to be sorry." Her hand trembled as she reached for mine. "Promise me something. Don't carry their anger. You've done enough for people who only take." I squeezed her hand gently. "I promise." She smiled faintly. Good boy. Then she nudged her chin toward the nightstand. Top drawer? She whispered. Inside was a folded page in her handwriting. If anyone argues later, give this to Henry, she said. It says what needs saying. That was the last time she was awake when I visited. A few days later, the nurse called again. She was gone. The funeral was small, held on a cold morning, with thin lights spilling across the fields. Only Uncle Henry and I stood by the grave. The others didn't come. Mum sent flowers and a short message about not feeling up to travel. Henry was quiet through the service, coat collar turned up against the wind. When it ended, he lingered while the others drifted away. He turned to me. She talked about you a lot, you know. You said you were the only one who never stopped showing up. She didn't have to say it. I replied. He nodded. Still, you should hear it. You worked harder than any of them. Don't let their noise drown you out. I won't. He gave my shoulder a light pat. Good, because you're better than the mess they built. I handed him the letter Clara left in her nightstand. He tucked it into his coat without opening it. When he left, I stayed behind for a few minutes, watching the wind move through the dry grass. I thought about what Clara had said, that peace built on lies doesn't last. The pieces of my life fell into place like switches flipping in sequence. My father's distance, my mother's guilt, Lena's entitlement. It all connected. The drive back to the city felt different. The road was the same, the fields the same, but the silence inside the truck wasn't empty anymore. It buzzed, faint but steady, like a live wire humming behind the wall. By the time I reached the city limits, I knew one thing for sure. My family had built their world on short circuits, faulty connections, crossed lines, constant sparks, and all this time, I'd been the one trying to keep the system from burning out. I gripped the steering wheel and exhaled slowly. The truth didn't fix anything, but it made everything make sense. You can't fix a family built on short circuits. A year passed after Clara's funeral. Work stayed steady, quiet, predictable, just how I liked it. The power station never changed. Machines didn't lie, didn't guilt, didn't play games. That night, I drove home from a 14-hour shift. My clothes smelled like steel and dust. When I turned into my parking lot, I saw 3 figures under the streetlight, surrounded by luggage. My first thought was that I had the wrong building. Then I saw them clearly. Mum, Dad, and Lena. Mum waved, already crying. Dad's arms were crossed, his expression locked between frustration and authority. Lena stood off to the side, scrolling on her phone like she'd rather be anywhere else. I didn't get out right away. I sat there with the engine idling, letting the headlights rest on them. They didn't move. Finally, I killed the engine and stepped out. Mum spoke first. Colton, thank God you're home. The house needs repairs. We can't stay there until it's fixed, Dad added. Bunch of crooks called themselves contractors. Ruined the plumbing. It's a disaster. Lena sighed dramatically. We've been driving all day. We just need a place to crash until everything's handled. I looked at their luggage. 2 suitcases each, a cooler, even a blanket roll. They weren't visiting. They were moving in. I didn't say anything for almost a minute. Just stood there, arms folded, watching them squirm. Then I said, 1 week, then you're gone. Mom exhaled in relief, wiping her eyes. Thank you, sweetheart. We knew you'd understand. Dad grumbled something about family sticking together. Lena smirked like she just won something. Inside, they moved fast. Within an hour, Mom had unpacked kitchen boxes and started rearranging shelves. She complained that I didn't have proper storage. Dad sat on the couch, turned on the TV, and judged every piece of furniture I owned. You make good money. You couldn't spring for something better than this. Lena took over my small desk, opened my laptop, and started typing emails. Just some work, she said. Don't worry, I'll log out. She didn't. By the next morning, the apartment felt smaller. The air smelled like Mom's perfume and Dad's cologne. I came out of my room and found a list taped to the fridge. Mom's handwriting, groceries we need. Underneath were things I never bought, all brand names. At work, Cal noticed I looked tense. You okay? Got company? I said family. Unfortunately, he grimaced. You letting them stay for now. That night, I stopped at the hardware store before heading home. Bought a small camera, nothing expensive, the kind meant for apartments. I mounted it in the living room near the smoke detector. For security, I told Mom when she asked. She nodded unconcerned. That night, I disabled the status light in the app and hid the feed behind a calculator icon. Nobody noticed. Over the next few days, the footage filled up quick. Mom snooped through drawers and opened my mail. Dad called relatives on speakerphone, complaining that I owed them gratitude for raising such a stubborn kid. Lena stayed up late at my desk, printing contracts with my name in the signature box. I saw it all in crisp resolution. She was filing a business loan application under my name. She didn't even try to hide it. I didn't say a word. By the third day, they had completely taken over. Mom replaced my towels with hers because yours are too rough. Dad adjusted the thermostat to his liking. Lena invited a friend over to see the place. When I got home, they were sitting on my couch eating takeout and watching a show like it was their living room. That night, I downloaded every clip from the camera, labeled and sorted by date. Then I copied them all onto a flash drive. In thick black marker, I wrote one word across the label: proof. On my way to work, I locked it in my plant locker, hard copy in case the cloud failed. The next evening, Cal dropped by after his shift to return a wrench I'd left in the truck. When he walked in and saw the mess, the boxes, the noise, the extra shoes by the door, he raised his eyebrows. Man, you weren't kidding, he said quietly. Mom was in the kitchen humming, reorganizing my spice rack. Dad was half asleep on the couch, boots still on. Lena was pacing the hallway on her phone, complaining loudly about deadlines. Cal leaned close. You're letting them live here? Just long enough, I said. For what? To show them who they are. He didn't reply. He just nodded slowly, then handed me the wrench and left. That night, I sat at the table watching the live feed in a tiny window on my phone, the noise of the TV, the hum of the fridge, the faint sound of Lena's voice from the other room. All of it blended into one steady buzz. I'd spent years being their power source. Now I was just recording how they used it. The week dragged on like a bad shift. By Friday, my apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. Their voices filled every corner. Mom had unpacked boxes I didn't even know she brought. Dad treated the couch like a throne, and Lena had spread her things across the kitchen table like it was her personal office. Mom caught me heading out that morning. Collerton, I'll need a copy of your keys, she said, holding out her hand like it was already decided. For emergencies, I looked at her. What kind of emergencies? You never know, she said. What if we get locked out? I'll risk it, she frowned. You don't trust your own mother? I didn't answer. She took that as a yes. Dad called out from the living room. We've been talking about expenses, he said. Groceries, gas, all that. You should start covering more since we're between places. You mean since you're living in mine? I said. He looked up from the TV. Don't take that tone. Family helps family. Yeah, I said. They do. Lena walked in just then on her phone. Oh, don't mind him, she said to whoever was on the line. My brother's just grumpy from work. I've been helping him get organized since I moved in. She winked like it was all some private joke. I went to my room without another word. That night we ate dinner together. Mom talked about redecorating. Dad complained about the noise from the street. And Lena scrolled through her messages bragging about a business deal that was supposedly about to close. I ate quietly, nodding when I had to. "Colton," Mom said, breaking the silence, "you really should think about upgrading your place. Maybe move to a house somewhere with space for all of us." Dad chuckled. "Don't put ideas in his head. He can barely handle this apartment." Lena laughed too. "He'll figure it out once he listens to me for once." I smiled slightly. "You're probably right. They didn't notice the tone. They never did." After dinner, I went to my room, opened my laptop, and uploaded every file from the camera and the copied documents from Lena's forged loan application. Then I attached them all to an email address to Uncle Henry. The subject line was simple: "Hold this. No message, no explanation, just the files." When the upload finished, I shut the laptop and leaned back in the chair. The hum of the power lines outside seeped through the thin walls. I'd heard that sound every day of my life. It was steady, precise, dependable, unlike them. The next morning, I called a real estate contact from the plant's maintenance team, a guy who handled private sales for employees. I told him I needed to close quickly. Title work was straightforward, no other names on the deed, and the mortgage payoff would clear at closing. He found a buyer within hours, a small logistics company looking for staff housing, and we set closing for midweek. The rest of the weekend, I kept up the routine. Work home, silence. Mom filled the fridge with things I didn't eat. Dad adjusted my chair to fix it, leaving it worse. Lena spent hours talking on speakerphone about her business growth. I watched it all, like someone monitoring a flickering control panel, knowing it would short out soon, just waiting for the right moment. On Sunday, I came home from work and found them watching a family movie. My mother had made popcorn. Dad had his feet on the coffee table. Lena was painting her nails right on the armrest. They looked comfortable, too comfortable. Mom turned. "We were thinking we could stay a few more weeks until the house is done." I nodded. "Sure." Her face brightened. "Really?" "Of course," I said. Lena laughed. "Told you he'd come around." I went to my room and started packing. Quiet, efficient, no wasted motion. I filled 2 duffel bags and 1 toolbox, stacked them by the door, and sat for a moment looking at the blank screen of my laptop. The next morning, before dawn, I loaded the bags into my truck. The city was still dark, only the streetlights humming like tired engines. Inside, the apartment was silent. My family slept, unaware. I walked through each room once. The kitchen smelled like coffee and dish soap. The living room was cluttered with their things, jackets, shoes, half-empty mugs. I didn't touch any of it. I left the deadbolt off, set my keys on the counter, and opened the breaker panel. I flipped the unit's main. The lights blinked once and went out. The refrigerator clicked off. The hum died completely. I stood there for a few seconds, listening to the absolute silence that followed. Outside, the sky was turning gray. I walked down the stairs, got into the truck, and started the engine. In the rear-view mirror, my place sat dark, one dead square in a building that kept shining. Some power cuts aren't accidents. By sunrise, I was already on the highway, the sky a dull gray strip over the fields. The truck rattled with every bump, boxes shifting in the back. My apartment, their apartment now, was behind me, dark and silent. I didn't look back. I reached the plant early, showered, changed into my uniform, and started my shift like it was any other morning. The turbines were steady, the panels green, no alarms, just calm. I worked through the morning with the same quiet rhythm I always had, but every few hours I glanced at my phone. Waiting. By Wednesday, around 9:00 a.m., a news notification lit my phone. Police called to remove trespassers from a downtown apartment. The photo was my building. The new owner had shown up with the recorded deed, and a no-occupancy affidavit I'd signed. When my family refused to leave, the officers treated it as trespass, not a tenant dispute. By the time I stepped out for lunch, the video was already online. It showed everything. The new owners opening the door, Mum's shriek echoing down the hallway, Dad's voice booming as he shouted at the officers. Lena appeared a few seconds later, half-dressed, phone in hand, crying into the camera. Neighbors filmed from their doors. People across the hall whispered, recording as the officers led my family out of the apartment. The footage spread fast. Dozens of uploads, different angles, different captions. Mom was screaming, "Our son betrayed us. He tricked us." Dad yelled, "He sold our home out from under us. That's illegal." Lena turned her camera toward herself and sobbed into the lens. "He kicked us out with nowhere to go. He's jealous of me. He's always hated me." Police tried to calm them, explaining that the property had been legally sold, that they had no right to be there. But logic meant nothing to people who'd lived off illusion. By noon, the clip hit social media. Clip, the headline read, "Family evicted after selling relative's apartment. Blames him." The comments poured in, brutal and fast. They sound insane. So they lived off the guy and now they're mad he moved on. Classic leeches. By 2, the full story broke. Uncle Henry had decided it was time. He uploaded every file I'd sent him. The videos, Lena's forged loan forms, the voice recordings of my parents complaining about how I owed them. He even posted a scan of Grandma Clara's handwritten note, the one confirming that I wasn't Ray's son. The internet didn't waste time. Clips of Lena pretending to be a businesswoman went viral next to footage of her being escorted out by police. Side-by-side comparisons filled comment sections. People dug up her old entrepreneur posts and laughed at her captions. Someone found out that her wellness company website had copied everything from another brand's template. Within hours, the other company filed a statement online downing any connection. Then came Dad. Someone uploaded a short video of him arguing with the police, his face red, fists clenched, shouting about fake documents and traitorous sons. The comments tore him apart. "He looks like he hasn't worked in years. That's the man who called his son selfish. He's lucky the kid didn't press charges." Mom wasn't spared either. Screenshots from the recordings of her snooping through my drawers, complaining that Colton hides money from us, made their way online. People called her delusional, manipulative, cruel. Within a day, the story made the rounds on every local forum. The wards became the cautionary tale everyone had an opinion about. By Tuesday, Dad lost his contractor job. He'd gone into work shouting about conspiracies and defamation, and his boss told him to leave before he embarrassed the company. Word spread fast. No one in their small town wanted to hire a man who went viral for screaming at police. Mom tried calling relatives for sympathy, but no one picked up. She sent Henry a long email begging him to delete the files. He never replied. Lena's investors dropped her the moment her name hit the news. The loan company filed an inquiry over the fraud attempt. Her accounts vanished one by one. Social media wiped clean. Website deleted. Phone disconnected. A week later, a post on a gossip board claimed she'd been seen working at a reception desk under a different name. Mom moved into a small rental outside the city, paid for by selling whatever furniture they had left. Dad apparently stayed with a cousin. No one invited them anywhere anymore. Meanwhile, at Everidge, everything moved on like nothing had happened. I worked my shifts, fixed the machines, kept the power running. The story reached a few of my co-workers, but no one said anything beyond the occasional nod or look of quiet respect. That Friday, Cal found me in the control room finishing the system log. He leaned against the railing, smirking. "You see the news this week?" "I heard. You finally flipped the switch, huh?" I looked at the gauges on the panel. Yes, I did. He chuckled and clapped me on the shoulder. About time. Later that night, I stayed late to oversee maintenance. The turbines slowed, their roar fading to a deep hum. The plant lights dimmed, leaving a calm glow over the floor. Outside the wide glass window, the city shimmered, 1,000 lights powered by what I helped keep alive. I walked the perimeter fence, hands in my jacket pockets, boots crunching on gravel. The air smelled clean after rain. Everything I'd built still stood. Everything they'd built had collapsed under its own weight. When I reached the far end of the lot, I stopped beside the main transformer, its steady vibration rolling under my feet. I looked up at the blinking red beacon on the tower, slow, even controlled. It reminded me of Grandma Clara's words, "Peace built on lies doesn't last." She'd been right. Their lies had burned out. Mine had been simple. I kept working, stayed quiet, and let truth do what it always does, expose weak connections. Before I left for the night, I checked my phone one last time. A few messages from unknown numbers sat unread. Probably Mom, maybe Lena. I deleted them without opening any. Back at my new place, the apartment was clean again. New keys, new locks, new furniture. The air smelled like fresh paint instead of perfume. For once, I didn't have to turn on the lights. I like the dark. At dawn, I drove to the plant again, parked outside the gates, and watched the first wave of sunlight stretch across the city. The power grid blinked alive in sequence, one district at a time, everything lighting up in order. That was what I loved about electricity. It wasn't emotional, it didn't choose favorites, it just ran where it was meant to, and when you cut the wrong line, the rest kept working fine. I stood there for a while, the hum filling my ears. They'd spent years draining every ounce of power I had. Now they were out there in the dark, learning what silence feels like. I breathed in the cold air and turned toward the turbines, beginning their slow restart. The sky was brightening, the city steady and alive. I didn't shut them down, I just stopped keeping them plugged in. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube, this video deserves to blow up.